It's a political ploy they're using to talk about the draft?
Yes.
I think the women would come forward and volunteer on their own.
Okay.
I don't think they'd be drafted, and if they did, I think it'd be very unsuccessful because they would be there'd be a lot of people who didn't want to get drafted would easily avoid it. They'd get,
right.
Physically they could avoid it easily.
So in other words, by getting pregnant, they could get away from the draft, as it is in the service now.
I think they could. I think they could if they wanted to. But, you don't know. That's a personal choice.
Yeah. Were there any women that served in your unit?
Oh, no. In 1955?
No.
1951 to 55, no.
Yeah. And I notice also that the names that are on the memorial plaque over there, there's no women listed there as well.
No, that would be real combat in World War II in Korea and Vietnam. They weren't in combat at the time.
Right. So, well, actually, 8 women did die in Vietnam.
Well, they were probably nurses.
Right.
The nurses.
Right.
But not combat. Because now women are in combat.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that way before. Right. You had the waves, you had the wax, and they mostly were clerical workers, read maps, calligraph, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
No, you didn't have any of that.
Right. It's kind of a contradiction to have a woman, representing the town, and yet she doesn't have the obligation to serve.
Well, she probably, you go through a certain phase.
Right.
Hey, if they really want to do it,
right,
have more power to them.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, then all we have to do is change the law and register them as well.
It depends. It depends on what circumstances. If they're getting enough people without the women, they probably won't need the women.
We want to know that if there is a draft now and women have, vote and hold political office, why wouldn't they be eligible for the draft as well?
Well, if we have enough men, I don't see why we need women.
Yeah, but that would be unfair to the men.
Well, somebody's got to take care of the home ground too,
Right.
And you can't have everybody overseas.
Yeah.
Then what do we do?
Right.
The women are worth their weight in gold. Don't let
So they should
I've
stay.
been married a long time, so I know.
So they should stay home and nurture the country and their families.
Do whatever they have to make things easy for the guys that are overseas.
Right.
They're in there now. You got pilots.
Right.
You got pilots. I don't know how much in the front lines they are now because
they're on the land.
And besides, they want to get in there. You can't keep them back.
And that's okay with you, for them to be doing that?
Well,
if that's okay, this is my point. If that's okay, why don't we have draft registration for women like we do men?
You got a very good point.
Well,
why don't they have
have a draft registration?
Yes, we do. We have
still-
a registration. We don't have a draft.
Yeah,
Right.
yes, that's true.
Right.
That might be a
That's
good
right.
point.
Yeah.
You're going to run for office, bring it up.
Mary Beth Murphy spoke today down here at the commencement meeting, and yet she talked about people fighting over there, and yet women don't have the obligation to fight because they're excluded from the draft and combat.
That's all right. Leave them that way.
You want to leave it like that? You think
They volunteer and do more things in the war. Red Cross, all of them were right there, just like they were on the front line.
Well, not in the same numbers as the men, though.
Oh, it's not quantity; it's quality that you get.
It's quality.
It's how you win. It takes a lot of effort to win.
So the women give a more quality effort than the men do.
Women still have to be supportive, or the men wouldn't be there. So it's a team effort. I hope, and it has been always has. Betsy Ross originated our flag too, so start there.
Well, in that respect, you're true. I always say the same thing about them out here on all these jobs. They put them on the tit jobs, the women, the tit jobs.
Right.
You know what that
Yeah,
means?
sure. Soft jobs, yeah.
Well, they put them on them like the policemen on the firemen and stuff like that. They got to carry the ladders, and the women are out there. They're standing along the road and waving at you.
We have to do what you feel like if you want to do duty and help your country. I don't care if you're man or woman or whatever. As long as you're willing to come and help our country, you're more than welcome.
But still, they have that draft registration and combat exclusion right now.
Well, I know I was drafted in World War II, so it didn't bother me any.
It didn't bother you that women didn't have to go through what you went through?
No.
Well, what about when they marched for equal rights? Didn't you see the hypocrisy there?
Well, I don't know what went on with that equal rights business. I mean, Remember when all the mothers marched on Washington there?
Yes.
That was put up by that guy Soros down in Katona, the multi-billionaire. He was pushing that and paid for the whole thing, from what I gather.
Right.
So it's a lot of it was political. So
Right, but even in 1970, women marched in New York City for equal rights, and at that same time, they were excluded from the draft. So I thought that was a hypocritical,
I see what you're getting at. You know? It's a tough situation. Let's put it that way. We don't want to get the women on the wrong side of us because we got to live with them. You know.
I think that's almost an obligation on our part to recognize what they want to do. And I don't see no fault with that whatsoever.
I really wouldn't want a woman fighting alongside of me. They can do other services and things like that, and no, I don't think that they should be in combat.
Times have changed, and it's like our member here that was in the army. She was at Normandy and everything, and
She was right behind the front lines, could hear the cannons going. I guess she told you she did the decoding of messages coming in and going out to the front lines, right with Eisenhower.
As far as the draft is concerned, I graduated. I had to get a 6-month deferment because I was going to graduate from high school. So I was able to do my last 2 years of schooling in 1 year. I got drafted in June. In December, I was overseas already with the ballot. I was only 18 years old.
Yeah, but you see, now you were drafted, you had to change your career, your education.
Yes.
Women didn't have to do that.
You've got to have a volunteer army. It always has been the one that did it. All the commanding officers out of West Point or Annapolis were career soldiers or career Navy people.
Yeah, but in my time, in Vietnam era, they had many more men drafted, and
Well, that happens if the president, he's your commander in chief, So you're if you go that way, you're going against yourself and a lot of our laws, and that's true today. And I'm not getting into politics again. I don't like to, but we almost had a repeat of what happened after the Vietnam War, and if we didn't break it, stop it. I might break your volunteer service that we have.
Okay. They were in wax. They did a lot of things. The women's when I was in England in a hospital, we had English women that belonged to the WLA Women's Land Army that did all kinds of chores.
so they volunteered a lot,
Yeah,
right?
they all
But there was
volunteers.
no obligation to serve.
No, not that I could ever remember.
Right.
No, we need them on the home front to support the 4 efforts that we had in World War II. If you know what 4 efforts stood for.
Right. Those were the men that were ineligible for the
Well,
draft.
they weren't either that, or they avoided it, or they skipped the country or went some other country or something like that. In other words, they did not. Some of them were excused, or because of their farming or occupation or some other duty. However, others just, didn't want to serve the country.
So you think women should stay back here rather than go overseas?
I wouldn't mind having one in a foxhole with me.
I mean, you got Hillary Clinton that might run for president, and yet she doesn't have the obligation to defend her country. Do you think that's fair?
No way. No way.
No, I'm not. I'll never be a women's liberal. I'll tell you for sure. They got every right to speak up as they have, vote and everything.
But they're the ones that are pushing for women to go into combat roles. The women.
They might. There are some women who think they could and should. That's all right if they voluntarily want to. But you'll never get a draft, I don't think, of mothers because of their carrying babies and so forth. That's not a combat role. They shouldn't be in combat ever. Not as infantry combat.
Just the fact that they get pregnant should exclude them?
No, I would not have women in combat. It takes not a man's world, but a trained world of men.